Well, hello, friends. Welcome to week 4 of lockdown. Maybe we should do this signal every time we see each other on screen. Lockdown. Week 4. But of course, it's very likely that later today the government will extend the lockdown restrictions for at least another 3 or 4 weeks. So we really are beginning now to have to live with the sustained pressure on us all, both as organizations like a church and also on us as individuals. Let me talk to you a little bit then about pressure and pressure points. We had our usual staff meeting on Tuesday, and I often use that as a barometer of the pressure that we're facing because the staff is simply a kind of miniature of the whole. And it was quite clear, both personally and as we shared on screen together, just how many issues of pressure we were facing in the light of the Easter weekend, last weekend. You know what happens when you have those family occasions and you get together with friends typically? Well, there's that human contact. And I think for many of us, last weekend was tough because we realized perhaps for the first time how significant the absence or the lack of real touch is. And I think that's true for all of us. Some of our staff were sharing their own personal challenges with loneliness and the issues that relate to having limited human contact with other people. Extroverts seem to me to struggle particularly in this lockdown world. It's not a problem that I have, but I know that there are many people who really find it very hard not to have actual contact time with others. So we need to be remembering each other in that environment, especially the vulnerable groups in our community. Pressures too from seeing members of the family who we can't actually reach and visit far away, who themselves are going through problems. And again, one of the impacts of not being able to travel and to meet family members at times like Easter is that reality or that realization that, hey, this is not easy and they are coping with stuff that we'd like to help them with, but we can't. So that's something to do with the pressure points that we're under. But then, secondly, and this is a P as well, the plans that are beginning now to formulate. We've spent as a leadership the last 4 weeks in this new normal, just trying to manage the impact on the organization. So as trustees gathered online on Tuesday, I began to sense that we're moving our eye line from the immediate day-to-day detail, now that that is establishing itself into some kind of pattern, to think about the more strategic, big picture issues that are very much still part of our conversation and part of our planning. So I invite you to keep praying with us as a leadership about those strategic questions. I'm involved with Mike and Miles and Doug in a major strategic review of 8 key areas of church life, where we're beginning to move from the immediate issues to review and assess how we're planning movement forward in those sorts of key areas of church life, whole church pastoring, our online programs of communication, how we're hoping to maintain discipleship and mission through these unusual times. So these strategic issues are now beginning to come to the surface, and trustees and staff like myself are grappling with them. I think one of the key and will have a long-term impact is how we're managing our regeneration project. If you're a church member, then you'll have been given notice recently of what we hope will be a date later in the year, July probably, although that's provisional. Like everything right now, it's all provisional. But to gather together in some format and just report back. We will be communicating, though, before then about the encouraging progress that we continue to make with Parsons and Joyce, our main contractor, in establishing best value for our construction costs, and in the encouraging progress we're making with our interest-free loan appeal. So far, that appeal is pointing in absolutely the right direction, And it's just so exciting to see and to know that people's pledges and commitments are being maintained so far as we can as a church. So that is very much appreciated. Within all the strategic review issues, bits and pieces of little encouragements keep bubbling up. So, for example, I had an email only this morning from someone who was telling me how they had had their birthday presents and cards placed in a bag and dropped outside their home by someone, and they were excited about that and wanted to tell me. I've been hearing stories about people from Lansdowne who've been helping up at the YMCA distribute food parcels to 70 homeless people through the week. Our online ministry is really attracting folks from all over the world. It was thrilling to hear how people from Middle Eastern countries are joining us for some of our teaching programs and are becoming involved in live chat conversations. Closed access countries, in other words, are opening up through the media communications. There are those of you who are now giving online to the work of Lansdowne, and that is, once more, so much appreciated by all of us, that facility to give to the work of the church through online donations. People are setting up lots of different kinds of WhatsApp groups and social interaction groups. It's having a kind of trickle-down effect. It's happening all across Lansdowne in different ways and at different platforms. And that again is very, very encouraging. I'm hearing stories of people now getting DVDs from the church. This is particularly a group where they have no access to online ministry, online media and communications. And so for them to receive some postal letters from Lansdowne, including the DVDs of our Sunday services, that is just blessing them and helping them feel still connected to us. Then there are those individuals who are continuing to love their neighbour in practical but careful ways. And all of that builds this picture of people, we're all under pressure, yet we are able to make our plans and to help others around us. And so finally, in this video briefing, let me share something about perspective. For me, it has been one of the watchwords of the last month. How do we maintain perspective personally and as a church corporately? How do we maintain perspective in the light of this pandemic? Some shocking realities. I think I mentioned this in a sermon recently, that in the south of Sudan, that country of 11 million people, they only have access to 4 ventilators. And so while we are so grateful to our NHS and our healthcare workers and our frontline responders and all the machinery that we've got, and we feel sometimes we need more, just imagine how difficult it must be to be operating in the context like the south of Sudan. India, likewise, I heard this week, struggling hugely with their practical health response to the virus. But what about our spiritual perspective? The words of Paul from his letter to the Philippians were a great encouragement to us on staff on Tuesday. We shared them and we prayed them through. Remember how Paul is in prison? He's in chains for the gospel of Jesus as he writes this letter. He's in lockdown. He's in real lockdown. His prison bars and his prison warders are making sure that he is tied and confined and constrained. But he knows that the gospel isn't. And so this letter that is full of joy to the Philippian church again and again refrains the idea that though our lives might be restricted significantly as they are now, that does not restrict the impact of the gospel of Jesus. Here's Paul's words from Philippians 1. It's true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I am in chains. But what does that matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached, and because of this, I rejoice. Have you got that joy in Jesus right now? I pray you have. I pray you get that joy in your circumstances from the perspective that comes to those who know that we are able to rejoice in the Lord always, not in our circumstances. No one's happy about these circumstances, but we can rejoice in the God of all our circumstances, for he's the God of all seasons. And so let me urge you, motivate you to choose joy, just like our dear friend Kerry Brown did every day. Choose joy, choose faith, not fear, and live in the light of the security that God gives us as his people, and the knowledge, the confidence that, though we are locked down, the gospel is advancing all over the world, and we can play our small part in that big picture. May God bless us in week 4 of lockdown.